Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Kyoto Bolt fam, it's the director. Chargers fans, can you feel that energy? Can you feel the surge? Chargers training camp is under full swing right now, dudes. There's a lot going on getting Chargers fans excited. Chargers fans, the season's almost here. Take a look at this, man. We got, what, like 2 weeks until the first preseason game of the year. We're starting to get pumped up for kickoff. It's coming up over here around the corner. And I think we're at that point of the offseason where there's enough to keep us entertained and pacified while we wait for the actual season to kick off, man. Speaking of which, training camp has been off to a really good start. If you're a Chargers fan, I've heard a lot of good things out of training camp this year, man. Specifically at how dialed in and locked in everybody is. Of course, there's a lot of narratives that can happen throughout every preseason. The Chargers solely focused on training camp and football, especially with that Justin Herbert extension coming in right under the wire. It's led to a very undistracted, fully, charged up training camp, at least what we've seen so far, kicked off. And there's some really cool things unfolding in terms of what we can expect to find in the Chargers season. In today's video, we're going to be pointing out some of the biggest narratives, some of the biggest things or takeaways to be looking at least from my perspective, so far from training camp. Should be a pretty good one. And guys, guess what? Today, the pads go on. We're going to have even more to talk about as the week goes on. Chargers, the season's almost here. Super excited. Let's jump right into it. Before we do, a shout out to the sponsor, Underdog Fantasy. With the season just around the corner, guys, now is the time to check out Underdog Fantasy. Get into those drafts right now. They're live, ready for the NFL season. If you guys want to get in on the action with the best fantasy platform on the web, use code DIRECTOR to match your first deposit up to $100. Great way to support the channel. With that, let's get into it. Before we do, hit us up with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. Small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification. Helps me out a lot. Let's jump into it, Bull fam. Lights, camera, action. My biggest takeaways from Chargers training camp so far. It's been what? The first week is kind of what we're covering in this video. Week 2 just kicked off today with the pads. Super excited to be covering that as the week goes on. But let's jump into what we have seen so far. Some of the developing stories in terms of like a lot of them having to do about the rookies, right? A lot of them having to do about some of the young talent from last season's rookies as well. A lot of development going on this year, which is really good to see. But I wanted to start this video off with, in my opinion, the biggest development from this offseason so far, perhaps the most important in Chargers franchise history in a long time, like one of those hyphenated, like, okay, the Chargers got this one right. Chargers do sign Justin Herbert to a long-term deal. Justin Herbert for life. We're going to be seeing this man slinging it for the Chargers until 2029. 7 years with the Bolts. A great way to start camp, I got to tell you, dudes. Getting something this big, a question this huge answered just under the wire before the Chargers get out there and start training for the upcoming season was a smart move by the Chargers, and I do applaud them for that. Huge contract, largest in NFL history, certainly for the quarterback position, and that's something that, again, feels like it's already starting to pay dividends into the Chargers offseason as far as training camp goes. You're looking at this man, Justin Herbert, out there. I don't know. He's transforming, right? I think with that kind of money, that kind of responsibility, he's starting to, I don't know, just move the needle in the right direction in terms of being a vocal leader. There was a clip on Twitter, now X, I guess. What do we even call these anymore? Tweets? X's? I don't know. That was circulating around Twitter of Justin Herbert in the huddle, screaming, shouting, being very vocal, a very vocal leader. And I do feel like now that Justin Herbert is making those big bucks, right? He's being that franchise, face of the franchise, sort of big name in the NFL. You do kind of see him taking on those responsibilities a little bit more. And that's something that is very, very important to a football team, and offense, the chemistry, everything. I feel like that sort of presence is pretty crucial for the position. It's something that kind of, isn't in the foreground of the position of playing quarterback, but I do think is very important. And Justin Herbert, with that money, with that extension, with I would say the security of being this team's leader for the foreseeable future, has really started to step into that role, I would say, rather comfortably. And guys, we're starting to see the benefits of a lot of different decisions revolving around Justin Herbert already start to unfold. They are letting this man rip. out there, dudes, in training camp right now, just letting it rip, dudes. Justin Herbert is airing it out. Finally, there's another clip circulating around from his, I think, rookie season, offseason, whatever. I finally get to eat, right? I get to eat finally, whatever. It feels like it's happening, dudes. It feels like this offense and Justin Herbert and what they're allowing him to do, what they're designing this offense around, is transforming before my eyes. Very exciting stuff. So bravo to the Chargers getting this man a long-term deal. Biggest news of the offseason, in my opinion. Justin Herbert, a Charger for life, hopefully, but certainly for the next 7 years. And it's got him fired up. It's got the team fired up, and it's pushing the Chargers in the right direction, all right? So before we get into all this offense in terms of what we're seeing differently, I do need to point out one of the stars of the offense that we've seen so far this offseason, man. This is absolutely ridiculous. Look at this, man, midair. Number 1 on the roster, Quentin Johnston, the rookie, who without a doubt I think has been that camp darling that we've all been looking for this offseason. Every season we see somebody that really stands out, right? Becomes that like highly anticipated player for the season. I think, honestly, as a Chargers fan, somebody that's been watching, again, I haven't been there in person, but I have been following very closely what's going on, watching a lot of the clips and tape and whatever you want to call it coming out of camp. Quentin Johnston, man, this is the dude this season, man. We've seen a lot of guys like J.C. Jackson last season, some other receivers really stand out. Quentin Johnston is everything that we hoped he would be and more, according to what we've seen in training camp so far. It's absolutely absurd how much presence he's brought to camp so far in his rookie season. Like, unbelievable. And the reason why I wanted to start with Justin Herbert in this video is because I think that's a pretty important part to why Quentin Johnston has hit the ground running so hard. The chemistry that we're seeing between these two receivers feels like it was always there, right? It's just so instantaneous. They hit the ground running together so aggressively that it feels like these guys have been playing together all the way back to their days in Oregon and TCU. Really crazy to see how quickly Quentin Johnston's presence is being felt and how aggressively he's being, injected into this offense. And there's a couple reasons for that. One, I would say the most important reason to a Justin Herbert specifically is because the man is getting open. And I think this is the product of a couple of different reasons, right? I think the first reason obviously is going to be Quentin Johnston's raw talent, right? I do think this man with the speed, and we'll get into that in a second, has been able to separate himself from the pack a little bit, getting himself open and available for Justin Herbert. We've seen a lot of passes in Johnston's direction where there's just not a lot of coverage next to him because he's burned them or he's found the empty spot, etc., etc. A lot of it also has to do with Kellen Moore, which again we'll talk about in just a second. But this man, just the availability is something that I'm sure Justin Herbert has already appreciated, and that's why I think the spark of chemistry in their game has been ignited. Number 2, I would definitely say, is certainly going to be that speed, right? Guys, I got to tell you, and I don't know if even the videos pay it justice enough, do it justice enough. The speed that we're finally seeing in this Chargers offense, highlighted by a Quentin Johnston, is unreal. This man gets the ball in his hand. A big thing that we were all anticipating and excited about in terms of improving the offense was his yak ability. Right? And he is showing that every week, or I should say every day in training camp so far. You get the ball in this man's hands. He's got the ability just to take off, man. And seeing that speed go from 0 to 100 from the receiver position is not something that we're very used to seeing. We're seeing it now from Quentin Johnston. We're seeing it from John Hightower, who's been looking kind of crazy out there. I didn't think that guy was super fast. Darius Davis, of course, the rookie out of TCU as well. He's been crazy good in terms of his speed. And then Jalen Guyton, who hasn't been participating due to an injury. The Chargers have speed all over the wide receiver position all of the sudden. And that's something that we're not used to seeing. But the biggest, and I think most important thing outside of Quentin's, availability and his speed, his body control and use of his hands is something I definitely want to highlight in this video. Dudes, if there was one thing that you were criticizing of Quentin Johnston about, Chargers fans, we're a little bit nervous coming out of the draft because there's some things he needs to work on, it would have been the use of his hands. And that is something, I don't know if at the NFL level, the coaching is just so spectacular or they got methods of helping, nip that in the bud. Every single time this man steps on the field, you think to yourself, how is this ever a concern? Quentin Johnston, of course the man catches with his hands. Look at this. Every play. There's been so many instances where the dude has to go up there and grab it while also trying to maintain body control, getting those, feet in, those toes in, and he's done it. Over and over and over again. Doesn't matter what part of the field either. This man targeted underneath, he's going to come down with it. Intermediate, he's going to come down. On the sideline especially, it feels like we're seeing a lot of work on the sidelines this season. I don't know about you guys, but my God, it feels like that's the area of the field that the Chargers want to control, and they've done a really good job at it so far in camp. Very good body control. You need that kind of body control and the use of your hands in order to execute that properly. And every single time, just about every single time, Quentin Johnston has been up to the task. So Chargers fans, again, I don't know. I don't know what this is going to translate to. He is a rookie. He's going to be going up against stiffer competition, but again, he may not. We were going to see him maybe matching up with a lot of cornerback threes, et cetera, et cetera. Either way, I think this is just spells very good news for the Chargers offense going into the season. I think Quentin may end up having much bigger year than a lot of us are anticipating. And I already kind of covered this in another video. I think if you guys want to check that out, it's called, I think Quentin Johnston's up for a monster season or something like that. I predicted somewhere in and around the realm of like 1,000 yards and like 6-7 touchdowns, somewhere around there. So something very, very decent, really, really good, very upper echelon for the wide receiver position. I think with what I'm seeing in camp, it's further reinforcing that. He looks spectacular so far. And to move on from this segment, which is also very important because I don't want it to get drowned out in the hype and the noise, because Quentin's going to be amazing. We're all very excited to see what he adds to the team. You know what's already on the team? Some crazy talented wide receivers, even in front of Quentin Johnston, which is kind of crazy to see because Quentin, again, starting to kind of show shades of a wide receiver one, is learning from two of the best receivers in the business in Keenan Allen and Mike Williams. These guys have quietly been dominating camp as well. Not to mention Josh Palmer. Of course, we talked a little about Darius Davis and John Hightower, which has been kind of the surprise name we've seen at the receiver position this season. These guys have been fantastic. And they've been working in ways that I don't know if I've seen before. As a Charger fan. I mean, sure, it's been sprinkled in here and there, but there's been an emphasis, which is kind of crazy. And it's really been working for both of these guys. So again, wanted to mention Keenan and Mike. These guys have been dominant. Of course, we expect them to. They've earned, the reputation, et cetera, et cetera. But to not skip over, this is kind of a merged segment here. This segment's called Roles Are Not Defining. And this is what I mean by we're starting to see different shades of Mike Williams and different shades of Keenan Allen that have been there, I suppose, but just not pushed in the foreground so much. And what I mean by roles are not defining is that we're starting to see these guys used in ways that I haven't really seen before. Maybe very seldom have we seen it before. Mike Williams, we've noticed, is getting a lot of snaps in the slot, which is interesting. Traditionally, you're going to see Mike at the X position, right? He's going to be your wide receiver one, challenging receivers down the sideline, which, again, he's been doing a lot of that, of course. Chargers trying to dominate that part of the field, like I mentioned. But seeing him in the slot is weird. that big body dude, the just giant receiver out there, it's allowing him to do some different stuff, which is awesome. I think it's polishing up on some of the things that we've been noticing in terms of his availability, his ability to get open, I should say. The little bit of space underneath is starting to give us a preview of what Mike Williams can do versus coverage in certain situations. And what the Chargers have in mind for the season with him in the slot, I don't know. Very interesting to see them try this out, though. And that's something I really like about Kellen Moore, the new offensive coordinator. This man is creative. I don't know how many times I noticed this in the last couple of seasons. But it's something we want to see, right? I think this is the time to look at stuff like that. And the Chargers definitely getting the ball rolling in terms of completeness, right? Just trying to get ready for the season with stuff that we haven't seen before. And I think that's a good job of the offensive coordinator to start to design now. Speaking of which, not just Mike Williams out there in a non-defining role. We've seen a lot of guys like Mike or Keenan Allen, for instance. We've seen him available deep a lot. And we all know that, Keenan isn't the fastest guy out there. Certainly not the slowest, but not the fastest guy out there. But that just shows that the coaching understands what he does best in terms of getting open. And to be able to translate that out to, more deep routes and deeper parts of the field is kind of cool to see. Because he's going to have to use different tools than these speedsters. And we've seen it working. Keenan Allen's getting open deep, which is very interesting. Also, just being able to dissect the Brandon Staley defense a little bit from Moore's perspective, finding those open, areas of space and zone, especially matchups and man coverage, it's been very impressive. Very, very impressive. We've seen other guys like Josh Kelly has been used, him and Isaiah Spiller used a lot in the passing game, especially as well. So we're just seeing a lot of experimenting going around. on the roster in terms of expanding roles. Seeing is believing in terms of do these guys have some hidden talents in different situations that we don't know about? Let's go ahead and fire up the old playbook and insert Mike here and Keenan here and Kelly here and Spiller here and see what they got. And so far, I mean, from my perspective, we're seeing some stuff that we could use in the season, which again, just the start of training camp, that's really, really inspiring to see, especially when the Chargers have had a very uninspiring offensive coordinator for a long time. Very, very interesting. I don't know how much I've noticed on defense. If you guys are wondering, if you guys are asking, like, Director, what about defense? The defense has kind of been known to move around a lot anyway. The offense is starting to kind of adopt that mindset too, which is pretty interesting. Speaking of which, next segment, Moore versus Staley. And this is something that if I were to highlight one thing outside of like the individual players, one thing that I've noticed in training camp so far, it is the narrative of Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley. I don't know how much Brandon Staley was being challenged last season, if I'm being honest. Since the start of his career with the Chargers, I don't know how much he's been challenged. Because in retrospect of what I'm seeing now from Kellen Moore, and obviously what we've been seeing from Joe Lombardi, it's night and day. And finally, we're seeing this version of Brandon Staley that's coming out a little bit more creative and a little bit more aggressive, and which is kind of crazy because when you think of Brandon Staley, like, oh, of course, he's aggressive, the fourth down guy. No, in the terms of the risk and reward and what he has to do in order to match what Kellen Moore is bringing on the offense. And that speaks to Kellen Moore as well. We've talked a lot about Kellen Moore this video. He's been a rock star. He's been a superstar. We'll kind of lay the groundwork for him real quick, right? He's been awesome. Like, one of the biggest narratives of the offseason has been getting a new offensive coordinator for Justin Herbert, one that's going to unlock the deep ball. And it's happening. It's happening, Bolt fam. If you guys haven't been watching the videos on Twitter, on YouTube, anything coming out of camp, the offense looks different. Casual fans, I could show my kids, right? And they'd be like, oh, it looks different. It looks more like, in the layman's terms, it looks more like a passing offense. And of course, last year was a passing offense as well, but you wouldn't know it. The passes were all so close to the line of scrimmage, it looks like we might as well have been running the ball, right? Might as well have been running 90% of trick plays and screens and all that kind of stuff. No, this year, it's happening. It's transforming before our eyes. The deep ball is finally, clearly the emphasis for this new system. We're going from an underneath sort of look offense, a quick passing offense. We are now a vertical offense, Bolt fam. This team wants to throw it deep. And what you need in the perspective of a game plan, of a system, right, of a playbook in order to make that happen, first off, you need the talent, in my opinion, which the Chargers obviously have in Justin Herbert and a plethora of receivers and even running backs that can get open. I don't know if deep, but you know what I mean. The availability is there. And two, you need a man creative enough in terms of running the offense that can get these guys open deep. I know there was a lot of talk with Joe Lombardi last season, like, we're taking those shots, like we're drawing up those plays, just nobody's open. It's different this year. It's different. These guys are open. They're going up against a good defense in Brandon Staley's defense, a good group of players on defense. You know what I mean? And despite that, they're getting open. It's tough competition out there. Moore versus Staley, this is great. This is awesome. This is awesome for both sides. Now Moore creating a very fun system. I promise you guys, this system's going to be so entertaining for Chargers fans to follow in 2023. Brandon Staley's been having to keep up a little bit, and you're seeing that. So I would say day one of training camp, the offense was on fire, right? They were dominating. And this preview of the deep ball, very much so exciting. H-bombs are all over the place. After that, it feels like Staley started to bounce back, right? I think reality kind of hit him in the forehead. He was like, yo, it's going to be a different training camp this year. And the competition stiffened up after that, man. Coverage has been tough, right? We've been seeing Vato and Asante Samuel and Derwin James and these guys all over the place. Like, it's been cool. It's been nice. These guys have been making plays. And what's kind of crazy is that we're at a point now, at least in the first week, where I'm looking at the offense. I'm like, they look awesome. And I'm looking at the defense. I'm like, they look awesome. And it's because it's such a back and forth competition, such a back and forth battle. Coverage has been great. I think pressure might be able to do a little bit better, but we've been seeing some plays. I think Khalil Mack has made a couple of big plays so far. Of course, Joey Bosa. And we're seeing some heads turned by Thule already, which is very, very nice. But it's really cool to see these guys. And again, I know it's a very cliche term in football terminology. Iron sharpens iron. And I think to the clearest definition is that's what we're seeing this offseason. Brandon Staley's a heck of a defensive coordinator, guys. Head coach still kind of left to be seen. I've seen a lot of growth in him. I'm not as against him as I have been and against other head coaches at this point of their career. Like, you go back to a lot of these other previous Chargers head coaches. By year 3, I was done with a lot of these guys, right? Especially Mike McCoy. This year, I'm like, you know what? I think we've started to see some corners turned by Staley. He's looking really good. But at very minimum, heck of a defensive-minded, a defensive coordinator, if you want to say that. Very good. And we've seen him in that mind going up against the offensive mind of Kellen Moore. It's been a treat so far. And I think that's something that is really going to translate into the season. Speaking of defense, I mentioned Asante Samuel Jr., which, by the way, just on the side, there's been a lot of talk about what his role is going to be on the team. A lot of people thinking that Jasir Taylor has taken over the role in the star or the slot position. I think that's smokescreen. He's been making some big plays. Asante Samuel, I think, at a pick 6 just a couple of days ago. I think he's going to be just fine, okay? But the guy I did not mention in that was J.C. Jackson, man. This dude is a Terminator. This is not J.C. Jackson. This is a Terminator sent from the future to destroy us all. J.C. Jackson's a freak, dude. I do not know how he did it. Now, don't ask me the specifics of his injury. I don't know what it's called. All I know is that it was a pretty serious injury. One that should have sidelined him, not just for this season, but potentially created complications for his career as a whole until the end. And despite that, despite a lot of us feeling like he wouldn't even be back for the first few weeks of the season, maybe even the first half of the season, there's a lot of unknowns. Despite a lot of the unknowns in terms of his fit on the defense, despite a lot of things, JC's back, dude. First day of training camp, he's out there breaking up passes from Keenan Allen, or from Justin Herbert to Keenan Allen. Keenan's one of the toughest guys in the entire league to cover, dudes, and JC was out there covering him. That's extremely impressive. And you can ask a lot of, DBs to do that, but to ask J.C. Jackson, the man who should by any means not be out there in terms of his recovery, we were expecting a lot longer. He looks good. He looks really good. And you know what? In training camp last year, he also looked really, really, really good. This is a very good football player. He's out there making plays. Dudes, the pads went on today too. I can't wait to see what he did. He's out there making plays. And I think there's a lot that was working against him last season after training camp. During training camp, we're like, oh my God, this man's amazing, yada, yada, yada. And everything slowed down after he got that surgery. And the recovery just kept lingering and lingering and lingering until eventually, of course, he went out. This year, that obstacle seems to have been surpassed. And I think, if you guys are wondering from me, like, director, what do you think in terms of surprise, in terms of like what general NFL fans are going to see from the Chargers, what's going to surprise them the most? I think it's J.C. Jackson this year, man. Everyone has forgotten about Mr. INT. And I think he's on a revenge tour this year. We've talked about how passionate he is to go out there. I think especially play the Patriots this season. But I think what he does speaks more than what he says. And what he's done is go out there and participate. Not just on the sideline, not just in rehab. This man's out there breaking up passes to Keenan Allen. And that is very, very exciting to see. I think I did pull out a picture of that. Look at that. That is very exciting to see. And it's also very encouraging and very good news in terms of a lot of us wanting to see his bounce back story in 2023. All right. Last couple of things I wanted to highlight here. Isaiah Spiller. Or not Isaiah Spiller, sorry. JT Woods. It's not 28, it's 2020. JT Woods is starting to move the needle. The safeties. I want to talk a little bit about the safeties. Okay. First off, Alohi Gilman. If you guys remember, we talk a lot about Alohi and his story of 2022. Started off kind of rough, of course. I don't know if a lot of us viewed him as that guy for a long time, but the second half of 2022, he looked pretty solid. He looked really good, and it feels like the Chargers are asking him to play that free safety position more often than not. Like they kind of feel confident that he's the guy. And he's been looking good. He's looking really good. Is he as fast or as athletic as a lot of the other guys? No, but he's been very good in terms of his coverage, right? But the biggest surprise for me so far has been the improvement of JT Woods. Guys, last season, JT Woods, there was a lot of hype because he was drafted a little higher than a lot of us were expecting. A lot of us didn't really know his name. And then we start looking at his highlights at Baylor, right? His highlights. And he's just kind of this ball hawk, right? This fast pick machine. He looked really, really nice out there. And when that translated to his opportunities in 2022, he stunk. He really did. I'm sorry, he stunk. His positioning was horrible. His ability to read plays was horrible. He just looked like a lost rookie out there, which really sucked because he's got a lot of these tools in his back pocket in terms of speed and size that he just wasn't able to translate as well as he did in college. And translating that to the NFL is especially a lot harder. This season, I would say the biggest thing that I felt a lack of confidence in JT last season was his positioning, right? He was never where he was supposed to be. And the tackling obviously is the biggest thing that we highlighted before he was drafted. It wasn't even that was as bad. It was his position, his play recognition or whatever. This season, that's already starting to change, right? His coverage abilities have obviously been much improved, which is very good to see. He's practicing very, close to the line of scrimmage a lot. I understand that. He's playing against, the run a lot. I think he's been blowing up screens and playing up against the run. It's exciting to see him expand his role, but more often when I see him out there, I'm excited to see that he's where he's supposed to be. He's still got to clean up his tackling a little bit, but for a guy who I believe is trying to earn a Derwin relief role, and what that means is when Derwin is not playing safety, he's playing linebacker or edge or slot corner or whatever, there's got to be someone still up there playing safety a lot of the times. And I think that's kind of what the Chargers want from JT. And what I've seen so far in camp in terms of his improvement in coverage and positioning, his play rec or whatever, I'm starting to become a little more optimistic about 22. So keep an eye on him. I'm excited to see it. It makes me feel a little bit better about the safety position as a whole. Could we still go out there and sign somebody? Absolutely. But I'm feeling better about the situation we have in-house today. Speaking of some of the guys from last season, Isaiah Spiller, who also may be underwhelming for the Chargers fans last season, is he starting to emerge, guys? Are we seeing a lot of, opportunities to number 28? Yeah, we are. He's getting a lot of first-team reps, which is very interesting. What I was expecting to see in camp this year was pretty much, Austin Eckler, Joshua Kelly. These guys are just kind of locked in as 1 and 2. But we're seeing a lot of competition between Isaiah Spiller and Josh Kelly, which, again, is something you would come to expect. Every football team wants a little competition. I think at this point, Austin Eckler is so far ahead of the pack that we're just kind of looking for that number 2. But we're seeing a lot more of Spiller than I expected with the first team. And we're seeing a lot more, I would say, success from Isaiah Spiller than I was expecting. And there's one thing in particular that I think he's doing very well. And this is something that you guys ask me a lot, in the offseason, like, director, what would he even do for us? Or is getting a little crowd out there. What if we sign somebody? What would Isaiah Spiller be to the team? I've always said that I view him as a guy you can mix in the passing game a lot. And we're seeing that a lot in camp. He's being worked into the passing game quite frequently in terms of a blocker, but especially as a receiver. And that's something very encouraging. And that's something I think they're doing now to future-proof this team in case something doesn't work out with Austin Eckler in the future. And they're very wise to do that because Isaiah Spiller, very good receiving back. They need to fine-tune those talents. They need to fine-tune that role for him. And I think we're starting to see the movement in that already. And I'm being honest at this point, guys, I still don't think RB2 has been solidified. I think Josh Kelly last season, obviously your RB2, absolutely earned it. He was very good last season. This season's a new year. In terms of RB2, I'm seeing some pretty good things from both backs. What do I predict? I predict it's going to be Josh Kelly. But I do think we're going to see more Isaiah Spiller this year than we did last year. By a lot. And I think his involvement in the passing game speaks to that. Next, we do have only a couple more points here. The linebacker position is looking kind of nice, kind of cleaned up. Kendricks, Eric Kendricks, the new linebacker from Minnesota. He looks like he fits like a glove on this defense, man. Like insert exit Drew Tranquil, insert Eric Kendricks. It looks really nice out there. In some ways, even better, right? I think Kendricks, again, in terms of positioning, in terms of his ability to complete a play, I'm seeing some really nice things out there, right? And his awareness, obviously, as a vet of the NFL, it's been on the next level. He's been fantastic. And I'm sure the coaches are very excited to see him in there. But it's behind him, because I'm not very concerned about Kendricks. I kind of knew he was going to be good. It's behind him that catches my attention in terms of some of the stories we're seeing. Dan Henley's looking really good, guys. Like, really good. Like, I don't know if he's been standing out as much. It's the linebacker position. We're just putting pads on now, you know what I mean? But in passing D, right, in terms of his coverage ability, we're starting to see that translate a little bit. Of course, coming into the NFL, he was touted as one of the better coverage linebackers coming into the draft or out of the draft. We're starting to see that, right? I think he's got already a couple of pass breakups. Playing the middle of the field, he's looked really nice, really smooth, really fast, really, really fast, which is really cool, right? But he's not alone. And this is probably one of the more shocking things that we've seen. Kenneth Murray is not looking bad. He's not looking bad. I know a lot of people, I don't know if we're rooting against him. I don't think we are. I think we're just a little fatigued from a lot of the dropped opportunities we've seen from him the past couple of seasons in Kenneth Murray and K9. But we got to be honest. He's looking good in camp. And Kendricks thinks so. Kendricks has been mentoring him. That's a great position, for Kenneth Murray. It's going to be an uphill battle for him, though. Even if he has a good season, he's got, 2 or 3 behind him that weren't so great, and he's going to be looking for a contract soon. It's something to watch, something interesting. I think linebacker, one of the more interesting positions to follow, because Henley's looking great in coverage, but Kenneth Murray's not looking bad. And it feels like Kendrick's presence has been boosting both of these guys, in Kenneth Murray and Dan Henley. So we'll have to wait and see how that translates. But it's been awesome. It's been cool. Dan Henley looking awesome versus in coverage as well. That's something that's very encouraging for Chargers fans. Big Bear Joey Bosa is back, and he's looking bigger. I don't know what to say. He just looks bigger. And the reason for that is that he added 20 pounds this offseason. You're starting to see that in camp a little bit. Again, pads just went on today. Edge is where you really need to see pads, but he's been looking really good. And it's going to help him a lot versus the run. I think that's specifically what he pointed out as to why he started gaining the weight, is that so he could be a little bit more effective versus the run. You can see it, right? You can see it all over Joey. Joey is definitely going to be coming back with a chip on his shoulder. Every single time Joey's been hurt and he's come back, he's had a stellar season, and he's starting to look really good in camp already. Him and Khalil Mack already been making plays. But one big thing that I wanted to pay attention to, which unfortunately I wasn't able to find a photo of for this video, is that they've been spending a tremendous amount of time with Tuli Tuipulotu. Oh my God, dudes. Can you imagine being a rookie in the draft thinking, oh, where am I going to be drafted? I hope it's high. I hope I make some money. But then you look beyond that situation. You look beyond the money for a second, and then the Chargers are on the clock. And you think, oh my God, what if the Chargers draft me? What kind of situation am I going into there? And then lo and behold, you get the phone call. It's Brandon Staley. You're heading to Los Angeles, or you're headed to LA. Now you're in LA, and you're being mentored by 2 of the best players at their position in the NFL. Maybe even in the history of the NFL. It's got to be up there. You got to be thinking you're in a good spot. You're in a good spot. You're in a good situation. And Tuli, I don't know, man. I play a lot of video games. Of course, I play Madden, especially franchise, etc. When you put a player in a situation where you want to progress them, where you want to help them grow, this is one of the best situations you're going to find in football. And to see that translating and to see that happening is very encouraging, not just for this season, but for future seasons. This season's going to be crazy. Third down rotations, Tuli Tuipulotu opposite Joey Bosa or Khalil Mack. The consistency is going to be annoying for opposing offenses. I'm going to tell you that right now. So Joey Bosa, good to see him adding some weight, get better versus the run. Khalil Mack, Joey Bosa mentoring at Tuli is very exciting to see. Very exciting. Second to last thing, last couple of things to close out this video. I wanted to point out one of the biggest things I've noticed. The roster is looking crazy good. This segment, I think, called Roster Strength is on full display, and it is. Guys, I think a lot of us forget how stacked this team is because of the injuries we saw last season. I think a lot of us, again, short memories as far as NFL fans. We didn't get to see a lot of that unfold last year, which sucked. It really did suck. But you take a step back. So far, things are good. Knock on wood, the health continues to look good. But then you look at the names. You look at each position. You look at the guys at the top of each position, and then the guys behind them. This roster looks good. This roster looks really, really good. And this is the first time that off of paper, we're seeing this be good, very good. As soon as these guys step foot on the field and we see them working together, building this chemistry or whatever, working off of each other's strengths, you start to notice just how stacked and how talented this roster really is. Wide receiver looks especially good. And the DBs have had to be especially better, right, in order to keep up. They've had to up their game tremendously in order to keep up. Edge is looking tremendously good. Linebacker is actually looking very, very good. Every position, in my opinion, has been looking very, very good. And I think, again, I don't want us to forget that going into this season. As fans, this is a detail that we need to pay attention to and appreciate, because we may not see the same unit of guys next year because of money. Let's sit and appreciate what we got right now, guys. This roster and its strength on full display. And like I said, iron sharpens iron. We're seeing that on full display. Last thing I wanted to mention, we'll close this video out. This is crazy good, dudes. Like, this is one of those things that, again, I don't want to go overlooked. If you're a Chargers fan, you need to hear this right now. One of the biggest things I'm loving from training camp so far. The coaching looks dialed in, dudes. And again, it's preseason or whatever. It's training camp. I get it. But I'm seeing a different Brandon Staley in 2023 than I did in 2022. I'm seeing, of course, literally a different offensive coordinator in 2023 than I saw in 2022. But more importantly, I'm just seeing a different confidence, a different energy, a different focus, a different execution in 2023 than I did in 2022. It's something I criticized last year, if I'm being honest. The coaching, it seemed a little like it needed some time, which it did. This year, it's different. Watch it, guys. Watch Brandon Staley's latest mic'd up on Chargers.com or Chargers YouTube. Watch some of the clips of Kellen Moore and Ansley, the defensive coordinator. Watch these guys speak. Watch these guys work. Watch them on the field. There is a different energy out there this season, dudes. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's a lack of distractions. I don't know if it's a confidence with these guys, a chemistry that's grown, a trust, but it's different. And the decisions I'm looking at in terms of growing these guys individually in their respective positions and using these guys appropriately in personnel decisions, all of it feels improved, like by a lot, a noticeable amount, an amount enough where I can point it out this year in contrast of last year. That is good. That is very good. That is very exciting. And if that can translate into the regular season, maybe above everything else we've talked about today, that will bring us a better chance of success, a better path to the big game than almost anything else. Coaching needs to improve. And if we see a version of Brandon Staley like I'm seeing in training camp right now, especially if he's making sharp decisions in game in real time, we're in good hands. We're in good hands. Well, guys, that's going to do it for me today. Thank you to everybody so much for joining me. If you guys notice some other narratives from training camp, please leave them in the comments section below. I just might shout you out in the next video. Help me focus in and research some stuff and try and catch some footage or whatever of these guys in camp. Very exciting. One of these days, I'll get my butt out there and we'll be, talking from a hotel room or something. It'll be really fun. But till then, man, very excited to see this team come together. Very big roster, very talented roster. Very cool to see all the pieces of this puzzle finally fit. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. If you like what you saw here, hit us up with a like and sub on your way out. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. Quentin Johnston, guys. If you look at one thing from training camp in terms of YouTube or Twitter, look for footage of Quentin Johnston. It's been unreal.